Thank you for coming on this beautiful snowy day. Isn't it amazing that each snowflake is different than the other? I like to know how they figure that out, but I love snowflakes sometimes. But anyway, welcome. Please put your hands together in Gasho to hear the words of Shinran in Wausau 59 Odokazan 2, translated by Hawaii's Music Committee, Gatha translation. By the benevolence of Amita's light, how in utmost we entrust deep thanks express. For our debt to teachers for their guidance true, we dedicate ourselves in gratefulness. Namo Amida Boots. Odoka-san was written by Shinran when he was 86 years old, over 750 years ago. And we are still singing it today because Sangha members committed to Amita's compassion throughout centuries have secured rituals and practices and musical practices that have passed them on to us. We experience Amita's compassion within our services, artifacts, pages, words, sounds, dance, and music. Before service, when we're downstairs in the social hall, we'll hear a bell ring, and that tells us it's time to come upstairs. When we get up, we bow, we come down, we do our Ashoka, and then we will hear the kancho ringing outside. And that kancho is ringing as it's referred to as a calling bell. It's calling us to service, as if the Buddha is calling us to join the Sangha to hear the Dharma. Listening to the ringing of the kancho, we hear a rhythmic pattern of 7 strikes, 5 strikes, and 3, with crescendos and descendos going in between the 7 and 5 strikes. When the bell is rung 3 times, it's hit once hard, then a small tap, and then a 3rd time. And when the 3rd time the kancho is hit, that tells us that the service is officially begun. The tone and melodic sound of the kancho ringing can have a calming effect on us as we sit down and settle in to be around the other Sangha members as we prepare to listen to the Dharma. Kancho bells frequently are hung, obviously, in the ceiling. Ours is outside, but sometimes they're inside. And I always just assumed they were outside because that's where ours is, but the first time I went to a different temple, it was inside. It was not only inside, of course, they rang it inside too. So I learned that some temples are in and some are out. But the music of the kancho on Sundays and other services prepares us to be aware of the 3 treasures of the Buddha, the Dharma, and the Sangha. Shortly after our service, Sunday service, and sometimes it's not unusual, and we heard it today, for us to hear the bells ringing for St. Michael's Church down the street. And I always think it is so nice that there it is again, twice today. Wait. I think this neighborhood is so fortunate to have bells ringing, these spiritual bells ringing, for whatever reason to their interpretation. But it's just, right? It's telling them, come together. We're going to come together. So on New Year's Eve, some of you might have been here and celebrated the New Year coming in with the ringing the kancho 108 times. And that is a tradition that's been around for a long time. And it's hitting to get rid of all those things that we want to get rid of. As Reverend Ron will say, hit it hard, and even though it'll come right back and you'll have the same worry later, get rid of it for a little while. But when Reverend Ron hit this year, when Reverend Ron hit the 108th strike, it symbolically rang out, our delusions for 2024 are gone, and now we're prepared to enter 2025 with grace and no afflictions. The daikon, which the bell back here, is also rung early into the service, and it introduces us to beginning to prepare for the chanting that we'll do. In Jodo Shinshu, our chants are poems and songs that Shinran wrote. Today we chant in Sambutsuge, which is Dharmakar's song of praise to his teacher. We chant in the traditional style that other Buddhists have practiced over centuries, with a rhythmic beat used to maintain a unified voice. When we chant, not only are we connected to other Sangha members at this moment, but we are connected to those who sat in these seats years ago, and many millions of others throughout the world who have also done the same chant. So we're interconnected. Sometimes I have a hard time chanting as I age. My voice keeps getting lower and lower, and I always can't find the right octave to do the chant in. So in one chant, I may be in 2 or 3 different octaves trying to find a home base. But when we get to the Nama, Nabu, I can do that okay. I don't know if anybody else has that problem, but oh good, I see a couple of nods, okay. But bells are one of the world's oldest instrument. It goes back to China over 2000 BC, and they're still used. In Jodo Shinshu, bell ringing is considered to be the voice of the Buddha, and having them ring can provide us some type of compassion and comfort. In addition to having spiritual bells, we also have a secular significance of bells. When walking down the street, we can sometimes hear school bells ring, church bells, and we know something is about to begin or end. If we're in a school, we hear a bell, we know maybe a period's over and the next one's beginning. But bells have a meaning. Fire alarms back, our old alarm clocks, remember the bells they had? The old telephones were all bells. We have bicycle bells, store entrance bells, anyway, a variety of bells. And each of those bells has a job to inform us of something. The sounds of secular bells and spiritual bells provide us an interconnection with others. When we hear the fire alarm bells, we are trained to react and behave in certain ways. We can only imagine the number of fire engine sirens and fire alarm bells that have been ringing throughout California this week. In addition to the wind blowing and the sounds of fire, there are home farm alarms that are still ringing. Some churches and synagogues, including Pasadena and even the LA Peninsula, are now experiencing reactions to the fire. As some of you know, a few years ago we had a house fire and lost almost everything. And it was not only through MBT, with great support and generosity, but also BCA temples throughout the country and even Canada that came to support us and provided us emotional support as well as many other artifacts of life to make the next step. Again, we can only imagine what's going on in California. And I want to just talk a teeny bit about Red Cross. When there's a fire, you always hear about the Red Cross comes, but we don't necessarily know what they do. They do a lot. They provide blankets for anybody and everybody, especially those people who are impacted directly. They provide gift cards for housing, gift cards for living for a week or two, gift cards for your pharmaceuticals. They are there for physical needs, but emotional support as well. So during this time, what California is going through, it's important that just like BCA Temple supported us, maybe as individuals and as a temple, that we can support California either directly or through the Red Cross or some other means. Because it's hard, we can't even imagine what they're experiencing right now. Another form of music that we practice at MBT and other temples is that of singing gathas. Singing gathas together is like chanting. We sing along with other Sangha members in a unified voice. Most Sunday services we sing 2 gathas. Each gatha has some aspect of the Dharma connected to it. We sing a range of gathas, some that are very old and some that are relatively new, and some that are written for Dharma school kids. One gatha that we sing, Becoming Free, was actually arranged by Yvonne Harada, one of our temple pianists. I don't know, but I was surprised a few years ago when I learned that gathas are new. My naivete, I just assumed all the gathas were my age or older, but I'm not, so we know there's new gathas, and actually for BC, there's a gatha writing committee. So if ever you're inspired to write a gatha, there is a process that invites you to enjoy and participate in. If you like I mean, we all have favorite gathas, many, but my real favorite one is Odoko-san too. But if you like listening to the electric bass, Reverend Harry Bridges from Oakland, California, Temple, plays a phenomenal version of Odoko-san 2 on the bass. So if you have, someday you would like to be inspired, I encourage you to go on YouTube and check it out. Other MBT music that, in addition to our gathas and our chanting and the bells, we've been here 80 years, and in those 80 years, Sangha members have participated in a variety of music venues that have provided us a lifeline. MBT members and their family members have established a music timeline of taiko, minyo, bonadori, and our choir. Yes, we had a choir. When Reverend Kono started MBT back in 1944, a few Sangha members came together and wanted to start a choir. It didn't go so well the first few years, so they didn't proceed, but in 1961, they came together again and had a choir that lasted many, many years. With the help of Reverend Ashikaga from the Chicago Buddhist Temple, and then Amy Katahira was a pianist. Current Sangha members, actually, who are in this room, had family members who were in the choir. Let's see, that would be, I can't see because of the light, Steve Arima and his parents, Elaine Miyamore's parents, and Joy's moms. So there's a variety of people here whose families were involved in the very early music of MBT. The choir sang for many years at the Memorial Day at Montrose. They sang with BTC choir at different occasions. And the choir sang at MBT's anniversary celebration starting in 1964. They sang the 20th, the 25th, 30th, 35th, 40th, and 50th anniversaries. From what I can determine, my research, 1944 Bodhi Day service might have been the last performance that the MBT choir performed. In addition to the adult choir, there was a children's choir and a sansei choir, of which Elaine was in, Elaine Mimura was in, Joyce Moyomoto, and a few other people whose name I'm not aware, but they were back to our sansei and children's choir, which too, from my understanding, didn't last all that long. Don't know why. And I only could find pictures, no written things about them, only pictures. But what's remarkable about this is if you look at the front of your program, is this woman whose name is Amy Katahira. Amy was the first pianist for MBT, for the choir, and she's the foundation of our music here. She played the piano for almost every Sunday service throughout the leadership of 13 MBT sensei, played for the choir for almost every occasion, as well as funerals, weddings, that I redid my math, for almost 70 years, Amy was our musician who kept us together. I once asked Reverend Ron the possible number of services that Amy had played throughout her career at MBT. He figured that Amy, starting to play in 1948, 1949, had played through 2018. She played for the Sunday adult and Japanese-speaking language services, funerals, weddings, Dharma school, choir, and various other celebrations. Reverend Ron figured that Amy had played a minimum of 8,000 services at her tenure at MBT. Amy passed away March 6, 2019, a few days before her 96th birthday. Like other MBT members here, we remember singing gathas as Amy played the piano. And Amy was always dressed to the nine, always perfectly dressed. So as we sing gathas each Sunday, let's try to remember Amy and how the music and her music was the pulse of MBT for more than half a century. To continue the deep musical roots that Amy established, we now have 4 pianists, Elaine, Christina, Bob, and Yvonne. So it takes 4 now to equal 1 Amy. Anyway, but we thank them also for contributing to our music history and their Anyway, other music at MBT. Ginza started in 1955 as a fundraiser and continues to this day. I think we only missed one, that was the year of COVID, you know. But other than that, it's been continuing. And it has served as a stage for a variety of traditional Japanese culture art, meaning Ninyo, Taiko, performances, demonstration of martial arts, including judo and kendo. MBT Minyo started in July of 1965 by the temple's Nisei under the leadership of Elaine and Carl's mother, Michi Ichikawa. Mrs. Ichikawa was a leader for many years. I'm not quite sure the total number, but her daughter, Elaine, has taken over as the fearless leader now. And so throughout that time period, since 1965, Minyo has performed at our annual Bonodores and the Ginza festivals, and they prepare the rest of us to participate in Obon. We know that Reverend Ron is a modest person, and I'm going to call him out a little. He knows I'm going to do this. And because of his foresight, talents, and efforts, committed to the joy of Taiko, that it was through Reverend Ron that Taiko initially came to the Midwest and the East Coast, initiating the popularity of Taiko outside of the West Coast. In 1975, Reverend Ron invited Taiko to make its first appearance in the Midwest, bringing with it the Kinada Taiko group from Los Angeles to perform at the Eastern Buddhist League Conference. 2 years later, in 1977, Reverend Ron invited Kinada again to come to MBT to perform at the 1977 Ginza Festival. They stayed for a week, taught interested members to become taiko players, and made the drums out of wine barrels and skin. Reverend Ron, help me. Cowhide. Sorry, all of us in senior moment, right? Anyway. Embracing the Buddhist concepts of harmony and oneness of Japanese American Buddhism, Taiko, Kinada taught MBT members to play and to make it own drums and to share the joy and happiness that Taiko brings. Our MBT Taiko group was formed in 1977. It became Chicago's first and now oldest Taiko group. In 1979, Reverend Ron took Taiko to Seabrook Temple, New York Temple. He's taking it to Twin Cities and other places as well. Each of these temples has created its own Taiko group consistent with the Buddhism philosophy of Kinada, making their own drums from the wine barrels and the untanned cowhides. Because of Reverend Ron's foresight and commitment to Taiko, each temple in the Eastern Buddhist League now has its own group. When whether listening to our Taiko, playing it, we can't help but feel happy and feel joyful. The feelings that Reverend Moss, who was in charge of the Kinada group through temple, that he shared. Thank you, Reverend Ron. Hoetzo, we also have our Hoetzo group, which was a Dharma school class that Jerry and Lynn Matsumoto were teachers of, and they had these kids who were very interested in Taiko, taught them to play and perform, and they created what is now known, with Reverend Kono's support, the Hoetzo Taiko group, which is again still part of MBT, but also an independent playing. So we want to thank Lynn and Jerry for their contributions to Taiko here as well. Can't talk about Taiko without mentioning Reverend Todd. Reverend Todd has been a long time Taiko player here. He started here at MBT, and then when he moved to Minnesota, went with the Twin Cities. But he's made an important academic contribution to Taiko through his studies when working on his Master's of Divinity. In 2020, Reverend Todd wrote his thesis regarding how the educational advocated in Buddhist Taiko is consistent with Jodo Shinshu thought and identifies the potential invitation in art from Taiko as a Buddhist activity in Jodo Shinshu temples. So thank you, Reverend Todd, for your academic work. current music at MBT, we have our share of it, which is unfortunate, and we're contributing to the history of MBT. Some of our Sangha members were active in the MBT String Quartet, MBT Band, MBT Ukulele Group. Christine and Elaine have play a duet of piano and cello. Reverend Todd and Yvonne play a flute piano duet. We have the backup singers with the band, the Dharma school students who participate in different ways. Dharma talks that embrace and include music and songs. Cliff playing indigenous music. Grady and Tara playing guitar and bass. Jesse and Alex playing a string duet. Our taiko, our hoetso. We are blessed to have so much music in our temple. I think in addition to in our music services, we should have a Gatha singing service too, that everybody shares Gathas they would like to participate, and all we do is sing for the service. That's just an idea of contributing to our future music. If you would like to join any of the MBT music groups, you're welcome to. If you would like to start your own, we're always open. But through music and rituals, we are connected to MBT past and Jodo Shinshu music. Our music moments shine on the path of enlightenment. The profound silence of the Kancho and the Daikin, Taiko, Drummo, and Minyo are reminders of the spiritual presence from previous generations and connect us to the present through the Buddha, the Dharma, and the Sangha. Our current music groups continue to contribute to the music history and to the traditions of Jodo Shinshu. Maybe some of you watching the motorcade, former President Carter being driven by his childhood home last week and briefly stopped in front of the home and rang the bell that woke him up as a child. And they rang the bell 39 times, each time representing a year of his presidency. Watching this event and hearing the ringing bells brought tears to my eyes. It was so moving. As did the recent death of Peter Jarl, and remembering the music he wrote and advocating for social justice. Thinking of bells and the death of President Carter, Peter Jarl, and others reminds me of the final line from the movie It's a Wonderful Life, when the little girl says, "Every time a bell rings, an angel gets its rings." But I'm also reminded that when I hear a bell, that it may be the voice of Buddha, calling to remind me to express thanks to previous generations and to demonstrate gratitude to the Buddha, the Dharma, and the Sangha. Please put your hands together in Gassho for a contemporary translation of Odoka-zan 2 by Bishop Tsuji and Reverend Nakagawa. In gratitude to Amida, the Buddha as words, I dedicate my whole being to realizing Buddha's intent. In gratitude to the masters of teaching and the countless good Dharma friends among our ancestors, I dedicate my total efforts spreading the Nubitsu. Namo Amida Butsu.